Every year when February comes around, something happens in Daytona Beach, Florida, that most people outside the South barely notice anymore. 200,000 people pack into a single racetrack. Television sets across America tune in by the millions. Hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising change hands in a single afternoon. And before the engines even start, before one lap is run, the economic machine has already been in motion for weeks. You probably think NASCAR is fading. You've seen the memes, the empty grandstands, the declining ratings headlines, the jokes about left turns and beer commercials. But here's what you don't know. In 2023, NASCAR signed a media rights deal worth $7.7 billion. Not million. Billion. Fox, NBC, Amazon, and Warner Brothers Discovery all wrote checks, competing for the right to broadcast a sport that, according to the internet, nobody watches anymore. That number alone should make you stop and ask a question. And in a few minutes, I'll show you exactly why that number changes everything you think you know about this sport's future. Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what NASCAR is today, you have to understand what it was built on and why it became one of the most uniquely American sports businesses ever constructed. NASCAR didn't come from a boardroom. It came from dirt roads in the American South, where men modified cars to outrun federal agents during Prohibition, then started racing each other for pride and money when the whiskey runs were done. In 1948, a man named Bill France Sr. formalized it. He didn't just create a racing series. He created a system of control that no other major American sport has ever replicated. In the NFL, teams are independently owned. In the NBA, teams negotiate their own stadium deals. In Major League Baseball, franchises have existed for over a century with their own histories and their own leverage. NASCAR was different. From day one family, the Francis, owned the sanctioning body, the rules, the schedule, and crucially, many of the most important racetracks. This wasn't a league. This was a vertically integrated business empire disguised as a sport. And for a long time, it worked spectacularly. By the late 1990s, NASCAR was the second most popular sport on American television, trailing only the NFL. Attendance records were broken every season. Corporate America discovered something unusual. On a NASCAR car, a sponsor's logo is visible for 3 to 4 hours of uninterrupted television coverage. You can't skip it. You can't look away from it. A race car is a moving billboard with a captive global audience, and the companies that figured that out early poured money in fast. Tobacco companies, beer brands, automotive giants, insurance corporations. They didn't just buy advertising, they bought identity. When Earnhardt drove the Black 3 car for GM Goodwrench, or when Jeff Gordon put DuPont on the rainbow-painted 24, sponsors weren't just getting logo placement, they were becoming characters in an American story. This is the moment most people point to and say, that was the peak. And after the peak, the decline. But that assumption carries a dangerous flaw. And here is where most people get it completely wrong. Cultural peak and business durability are not the same thing. Think about it this way. The most culturally dominant moment for McDonald's was probably the 1980s and 1990s. Ronald McDonald on every corner, Happy Meals as a childhood ritual, Super Bowl commercials that the whole country talked about. Today, the discourse has shifted. Health culture, fast casual dining, social media food trends. McDonald's doesn't dominate conversation the way it once did. But McDonald's made $40 billion in revenue in 2023. The business didn't follow the cultural moment downward. NASCAR is operating on the same principle, and the numbers prove it. Yes, television ratings have declined. The 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season averaged just under 2.5 million viewers per race, down 14% from the prior year. That is a real drop, and nobody in the sport pretends otherwise. But here is the shock that most casual observers miss entirely. The price broadcasters pay for those declining ratings went up 40%. Let me say that again. Fewer people watched. And the networks paid 40% more for the right to broadcast it. How is that possible? Because in modern media, live sports are the last thing people actually watch in real time. Everything else, scripted shows, movies, reality television, gets recorded, streamed, paused, rewound. Advertisers can't guarantee eyeballs on their commercials for any of it. Live sports are different. You watch a race when it happens, or you don't watch it at all. The result matters. The moment matters. And for advertisers paying premium rates for guaranteed live audiences, that value does not disappear just because the overnight Nielsen numbers went down. Fox, NBC, Amazon, and Warner Bros. Discovery understood this when they collectively committed to $1.1 billion per year through 2031. That is not the behavior of companies making a bet on a dying property. That is the behavior of sophisticated media corporations protecting access to one of the few remaining guaranteed live audiences in American sports. But the broadcast money is only one piece of this machine. And the piece most people have never thought about is the one that makes NASCAR's business model genuinely unlike anything else in American sports. Look at a NASCAR car. Really look at it. On the door, on the hood, on the rear quarter panel, across the driver's helmet, down the front bumper. Every surface of that vehicle is a commercial contract. In the NFL, the New England Patriots can put one sponsor's logo on their jersey. One. In the NBA, teams are allowed a small patch, 4 inches by 4 inches, on a single uniform location. A NASCAR car has dozens of sponsor placements across the entire body of the vehicle, the driver's fire suit, the team's pit crew uniforms, the hauler, the garage wall, and every piece of team equipment visible on broadcast. And those cars are on screen, moving, unobstructed, for 3 to 5 hours of continuous television coverage every single race weekend. The economics of this are staggering, and they create a dynamic you find nowhere else. In NASCAR, sponsorship isn't a supplement to team revenue. For most teams, it is the primary revenue. A single primary sponsorship deal for a competitive Cup Series team can range from $10 million to over $40 million per season. Joe Gibbs Racing, one of NASCAR's top teams, generated an estimated $116 million in sponsorship revenue in 2024 alone. The machine that builds that money is not just the car. It is the relationship between brands and a specific kind of American consumer. Here is a fact that changes how you think about NASCAR's audience. NASCAR fans are among the most brand-loyal sports audiences in the world. Studies have consistently shown that NASCAR fans are significantly more likely to purchase a sponsor's product, specifically because that brand sponsors NASCAR. This isn't casual brand awareness. This is purchase behavior. It is the reason Goodyear has been in NASCAR for decades. It is the reason insurance companies, energy drink brands, automotive manufacturers, and financial services firms keep writing checks. The demographic is working class and middle class American men and women, predominantly in the South and Midwest, with disposable income tied directly to the brands that advertise in the sport. When Coca-Cola sponsors a NASCAR team, they aren't just reaching fans. They are reaching consumers who will actively choose Coke over Pepsi at a grocery store because of that sponsorship. That behavior is worth money. Real, trackable commercial money that shows up in quarterly sales reports and brand equity studies. And it explains something crucial: why sponsors keep returning even when the ratings numbers slide. But the broadcast money and the sponsorship money are still not the full picture. Because there's a third revenue engine in NASCAR that most people have completely forgotten to consider. And it might be the most underestimated piece of the entire system: the tracks. In almost every other major American sport, teams own their arenas or stadiums, or they lease from city governments. The league itself doesn't own the venue. Revenue from gate receipts, parking, concessions, and hospitality goes to the local franchise. NASCAR restructured this entirely in 2019 when the France family's NASCAR organization completed a buyout of its sister company, International Speedway Corporation, consolidating ownership of 11 of the country's most important racetracks under one umbrella, including Daytona International Speedway and Talladega Superspeedway. A second major operator, Speedway Motorsports Inc., controls another 10 tracks on the Cup Series schedule. What this means in practice is that the economic value of a race weekend doesn't just flow to a team or a city. It flows back through a vertically integrated ownership structure that controls real estate, hospitality revenue, event operations, and venue economics from the inside. The Daytona International Speedway alone generates an estimated $1.6 billion in annual economic impact for the surrounding Volusia County area. The 2025 Daytona 500 drew 6.76 million television viewers, making it the most watched NASCAR broadcast in recent years, while simultaneously generating an estimated $388 million in sponsorship revenue for that single event weekend. Think about that. One race, one weekend, $388 million in sponsorship activity, and the 2026 Daytona 500? Before the green flag dropped, Fox had already collected $32 million in advertising slots just from broadcast commercials during the broadcast window. A sport that is supposedly fading does not generate numbers like these. But here is the part of this story that nobody talks about. And it is the part that reveals something deeper, not just about NASCAR, but about how sports businesses actually survive. You probably think the biggest threat to NASCAR is declining television ratings, or changing demographics, or competition from Formula One, which has exploded in American popularity since the Netflix docuseries Drive to Survive turned it into a cultural moment. And you're partially right. Those pressures are real. NASCAR's sponsorship revenue dropped from $425 million in 2023 to $362 million in 2024, a nearly 16% decline. The sport went over a year without a Premier Series title sponsor after Geico departed, eventually replacing them with Freeway Insurance in October 2024. A significantly smaller brand at an undisclosed but reportedly lower price. The ratings slide is real. The sponsorship pressure is real. The competition from Formula One is real. But here is what that narrative misses. NASCAR's financial architecture was never built on cultural dominance. It was built on contractual infrastructure. $7.7 billion in media contracts doesn't evaporate because a competitor got popular on Netflix. 40-year relationships between NASCAR and its regional fan base don't dissolve because Brooklyn discovered Formula One. There is a difference between a business that is struggling and a business that is adapting. And right now, NASCAR is doing something that most people haven't noticed yet. It is repositioning. The sport added Amazon Prime Video and TNT Sports to its broadcast package, not to replace traditional television, but to capture younger, streaming native audiences who don't watch cable. It moved the Clash, its non-points exhibition race, to a temporary oval inside the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, placing NASCAR inside one of America's most media-saturated cities. It built a street circuit race in downtown Chicago, running cars through the city center to generate social media content and cultural visibility with urban demographics that traditional NASCAR never reached. The next-gen car, introduced in 2022, was redesigned with standardized components, partly to reduce team costs, but also to attract new manufacturers and technology partners who see NASCAR as an engineering platform, not just a racetrack. These are not the moves of a sport in denial about its challenges. These are the calculated moves of a business that has been operating for over 70 years and understands that survival requires reinvention without abandoning the core. And the core in NASCAR's case is something no other sport in America has been able to fully replicate. 17 of the top 20 most attended sporting events in the United States are NASCAR races. Not NFL games, not NBA finals, not World Series games, NASCAR races. Because when a Cup Series event comes to a small town in the American South or Midwest, it doesn't feel like a sporting event. It feels like a cultural gathering, a pilgrimage. Fans drive hundreds of miles. They set up campsites in the infield for 4 days. They spend money on food, fuel, merchandise, hotel rooms, and local restaurants. The economic footprint of a single race weekend can exceed $40 to $60 million for a mid-sized American county. This is not something that gets replicated by a Formula One street circuit in Miami. It is a deeply embedded behavioral ritual that exists in a specific segment of American culture, and it has been financially exploited and reinforced for 7 decades. That fan loyalty is not nostalgia. It is a revenue-generating asset that appears on no single balance sheet but powers every number in this entire business. So here is the real lesson, and this is the part that flips everything. The question has never been whether NASCAR is the most exciting sport in America. The question has never been whether it dominates the cultural conversation the way it did in 2001 when Dale Earnhardt died at Daytona and the whole country stopped. The question is, does the business still generate sustainable revenue through multiple independent channels: media, sponsorship, events, track economics, licensing, and regional consumption, even when the cultural spotlight has moved on? And the answer, backed by a $7.7 billion media deal, by hundreds of millions in annual sponsorship revenue, by 17 of the top 20 most attended American sporting events, and by over $1 billion in regional economic impact from a single racetrack, is yes. The real insight isn't about NASCAR specifically. It's about how you measure a business. Hype is visible, systems are invisible, and the systems that were built over 70 years of American motorsport don't stop functioning just because the internet moves on to something else. Most of what we call decline in sports and business is actually just the fading of a moment that was always temporary. The peak of cultural ubiquity that no business, no sport, no brand can sustain forever. What remains after that peak is the infrastructure, the contracts, the habits, the commercial relationships, the real estate, the broadcast deals, the loyal consumer bases that show up in every February, for the same race. NASCAR may no longer sit at the center of American sports culture the way it once did, but culture is loud and temporary. Systems are quiet and durable, and the money, as it almost always does, keeps following the systems.